In Washington, I'm Jack Speer. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump surveyed hurricane damage in Florida and Georgia today in the wake of Hurricane Michael. The Trumps flew over some of the most heavily damaged areas in a helicopter. At Robins Air Force Base in Georgia, the president praised FEMA Director Brock Long for the job his agency's doing.
I want to just commend you on the job you're doing. We just left Florida, and they're so thrilled with what's happened with our people, our talent. But they're not thrilled about this hurricane because this was brutal. They haven't seen anything like it. And possibly there hasn't been anything like it. The wind's almost 200 miles an hour, just wiped houses away.
Florida Panhandle took a direct hit last week from the hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 155 miles an hour. Hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses in Florida and Georgia are still without power. At least 17 people died in the storm and more remain unaccounted for. More than 150,000 people are without power in Florida's Panhandle after the hurricane. WFSU's Sean Mulcahy reports that with recovery efforts expected to extend into November, people are turning to distribution sites for food and water.
Crossroads Academy Charter School in Quincy, Florida, outside Tallahassee, remains closed, but students and teachers are here distributing hot meals and food to the community. Janelle Peoples is here eating with her son and daughter. She says the storm was
terrible. It was terrible. Just watching how the wind was blowing, it was taking all the shingles off the homes and everything. And I was watching all the trees just break in half and just flying everywhere.
Crews are working around the clock, but officials say it could be anywhere from weeks to months before cleanup efforts are complete. Talquin Electric hopes to restore power to most Quincy residents by Friday, but the hardest hit areas could be in the dark for 2 weeks or longer. For NPR News, I'm Sean Mulcahy in Tallahassee.
The Supreme Court has refused to hear an appeal brought by 3 major paint manufacturers found liable in the lower courts for selling and advertising lead-based paint. NPR's Nina Totenberg has more.
A trial court found that companies knew as early as the 1920s that lead-based paint caused brain damage, especially in children. The court then ordered the companies to pay for the removal of the paint in homes in 10 California jurisdictions, including Los Angeles and San Francisco. The paint companies appealed all the way to the Supreme Court with lots of support from manufacturers of other products. But now the High Court has refused to hear the case, leaving in place the lower court order to remove the paint in all houses built before 1951, when the companies stopped promoting lead paint. The estimated cost of the removal, $400 million. Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen has died. Allen reported to have died from complications from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in Seattle. He co-founded Microsoft with Bill Gates. Paul Allen was 65 years old. On Wall Street, the Dow was down 89 points. You're listening to NPR. Oregon Senator Ron Wyden is blasting a plan under consideration by the Trump administration to use military bases or other federal facilities for fossil fuel exports. Wyden saying it amounts to trampling on the rights of West Coast communities. The administration is considering using West Coast military facilities as transfer points for shipments of U.S. coal and natural gas to Asia. 3 new releases hit the theaters over the weekend, but Venom was too deadly for them to overcome. The comic book adaptation repeats as the top draw at the box office for a second straight week. NPR's Trina Williams has more.
Venom grosses $35.7 million in ticket sales, defying poor reviews.
Man and symbiote combined. This is a new race, a new species. A higher life form.
Less villain and more anti-hero in this big screen version. The Venom symbiote and its human host fight to save humankind. A Star is Born also remains runner-up with a strong second-week finish. The highest-grossing newcomer is First Man, debuting at number 3. Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween follows, opening in 4th, while Smallfoot drops to 5th. Despite its all-star lineup, Bad Times at the El Royale opens at number 7. Trina Williams, NPR News.
An escaped cow that managed to stay on the lam for 2 weeks after a tractor-trailer overturned north of Atlanta has finally been captured. News outlets there reported 89 cows escaped when a livestock truck overturned on a cloverleaf at I-75 and I-285. Officials say the final cow was found in a wooded area and captured this afternoon. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I hope everybody had a good break. We've got some questions in the chat room that we're going to get to. The first one is from David Harding. He asks, how many days was the event in Michigan?
That was a 2-day event. That was Friday and Saturday, October 12th and 13th, I believe, yeah.
Okay. And then Brenda asks, how did Daniel get into the paranormal field? Was it a personal experience?
It was kind of, for me, it started off when I was young. I grew up in a haunted house. Not really like negative haunting. It was just a situation where there was a couple of kids that actually were in the house that had passed away. My parents always sloughed it off as people pulling pranks on us. But I knew that there was something. There had to be something there more than meets the eye because... there would be like crayon drawings on our ceiling, 10-foot vault ceilings, and then there'd be like my sister's stuffed animals would be moved around. She was like a neat freak, where she'd always have to wake up and put her stuffed animals on her bed, and then to be sitting in the middle of the floor. I'd hear singing when I walked in the house. You'd hear creak, which I guess you could chalk up to the house settling or whatnot, but you always had that creep factor that somebody or something was watching you, and it was, not till I turned 18 that I went to Lilydale Assembly, which is a psychic community. My friend talked me into going there. I didn't really believe in psychics at the time, but I said, if I'm going to do this, hook me up with a good one, Hook me up with so she actually set me up with the president of the Lilydale Assembly, which her name was Ellen Bourne, and before I even sat down or even paid her, she said, you have 2 child spirits living in your house, and they're attached to something in the house. And I said, wow, you just kind of gave me everything I wanted to know. Thank you so much, and I'm out of here, But she continued to kind of tell me things and kind of made me understand a little bit more about the paranormal. And I ended up going back, and that was kind of like, I guess, my first haunted house purchase, because I ended up buying that house back from them when they were going to move my family in there. And my kids ended up having some of the same things happen to them that were happening to me when I was little. And I ended up researching the house after I got the deed, finding that there were 2 kids that died of cystic fibrosis, and eventually found out that they were attached to a painting that I had found up in the attic that was, someplace I had never been in the house. One of those little attics with a hole in the ceiling, and I had to get a ladder and go in there, and it was like opening a tennis can, like whoosh, when I finally popped that sucker, because nobody had ever gone up there. And then I tiptoed over when I saw these boards in the corner, and there were paintings of a little boy and a little girl. So it was like my first Scooby-Doo episode when I was at a young age, and I just instantly became interested in learning more about the paranormal. I started going to Gettysburg and going to different paranormal events, and just started soaking it in to where I am today, just learning from people and learning as much as I can, still do.
This Lilydale, isn't it in New York?
Yeah, it's actually about an hour outside of, about 45 minutes outside of Hinsdale. It's a beautiful community. A lot of psychics go there, live there. Just a really relaxing, picturesque location.
Didn't they do a supernatural episode on Lilydale?
They did.
Okay, because I was like, this sounds very familiar to me, and because it was the one with the fairies.
Yes. But
it really wasn't.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, it was funny. So, okay, because I'm going, this sounds familiar. Why does it sound familiar? So that is interesting that they should should come to you and just say, yep, you got 2 spirits attached to your house.
And then the painting was of a little boy and a little girl playing with a dog, which. Mm-hmm. And then the death notice that I found in the paper was of the little boy and the little girl that died of cystic fibrosis. So I was like, boom, boom, boom. There you go.
That's strange.
Figured it out.
That they both died of the same thing.
It happened quite often because there was, back then, when one of the parents was a carrier, most of the children they had that. They didn't have a cure for it back then. So it was hard to, that happened. There was another family in North Tonawanda where I live that had another there was another 2 children that had died as well, the same thing, cystic fibrosis. So it's just if there's 2 positive carriers, the kids are going to have it, and there was no way to cure it back then. Well, there is today, but not back then.
Yeah, and it's still hard to cure now.
It is, yeah.
So,
but your chances are a lot better now than it was back in the 1930s and 40s.
oh yeah. Carl from Caldwell County Paranormal in Missouri, he asks, what equipment do you like to use?
Well, I said I didn't like psychics at first, but now I always try. I have a couple that I like to bring with me, just to kind of get like what their thoughts are on the building and the location that we're in. But I like to use just a basic recorder and a K2 meter, just basic stuff. My ears, my eyes, and basic tools are my favorite to use when I go into a location. I definitely like to use my ears, listen, ask questions and listen the most. But if I can get an EVP, it's awesome for me.
How often do you get EVPs?
It's hard to say. Like I've been doing a lot of experimenting with collective consciousness too. I did a group session at the Hinsdale House. It was like 2 weeks ago, and we all determined a word on the outside of the house, and there was 12 of us. And then we went into the house, sat in the living room, and for 2 minutes I just played the recorder with silence. And then on the recorder, when I played it back, the word pickle was on there. And I was like, this is really weird. It makes you think, like can EVPs be placed on a recorder by your mind, just by the thoughts of what you want to hear. But I say, I'm not going to say that I get one every time I go to a location, a Class A EVP, probably like 7 or 8 a year maybe. I do a lot of investigating, a really good EVP. But, it all depends on how much you do it,
Didn't we see you on another episode of Paranormal Lockdown, like in Buffalo?
Yeah. So when they started filming season 2, I obviously started a friendship with Nick and Katrina and Justin, and they were looking for locations. And one of the locations that my team helped out with a lot was the Statler Hotel. The old Statler Hotel in Buffalo. It's 950,000 square foot of old hotel and subfloors and basements and Turkish baths, and it's got quite the story to it as well. And I told them that they could come there and film there, talk to the owner, and they took me up on it and interviewed me for the location, and we played some of the EVPs that we had caught in there throughout the years as well, and just kind of gave them a little bit of a tour of the location, and they did their thing at that location as well. It's an amazing building. Actually, my team's there right now doing a tour until 10 o'clock with a sold-out group. Pretty cool.
Well, I remember seeing that location and going, damn, that's huge.
It is.
It's like, and is every floor open when you do an investigation, or just certain floors?
No, every floor right now is open. There are certain floors that are just old office buildings, because it has been bought so many times and so many people were trying to reinvent this old Statler Hotel. That was a mixed office space. Then there's actually the old hotel rooms from the Statler Hilton that were never renovated. So there's still some old hotel rooms on some of the floors. And then some of the floors have been gutted already for repurposing, because they're going to start, reusing and rebuilding the building again. They've put $4.5 million into the ballrooms. So they actually have the old Statler Ballroom, which is an amazing ballroom. Frank Sinatra played there. Tony Bennett played there. Elvis stayed there when he played in Buffalo, but he always rented out the 5th floor. And there's pictures of him in the building. John F. Kennedy stayed. And there's so many famous people that actually stayed in the building. And the funny thing is, 2 of the general managers actually died. They actually slept in. They had their own hotel room. Actually died in their hotel suite while they were sleeping. One of the maids got caught in the elevator shaft and died. Many came there, and jumped out of windows. And it's funny because when we researched the building, you don't find the articles in the Buffalo News. You find them like in